We are paid, that's all. We are God.
Yo guys! I'm Yuruzi. Part 7 of What If Naruto Didn't Become the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki. Naruto was born 5 years before the Kyuubi attack and the fox was sealed into his younger sister. His parent don't have the time to teach him, so he looks to others to help him become a great shinobi. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe and check the author in the description. Let's start. Chapter 23. How you doing, Mito-chan? You having fun? Naruto called as he sat on top of a low-leveled roof with his elbows propped up as he stared down at his sister who was picking up trash around the Hokage monument. Oni-chan, stop bothering me, Mito whined, which only served to make Naruto laugh as he watched her team complete another D-rank mission. Her teammate Shikamaru was lazily tossing some trash into the black bag in his hands while the pale boy Sai got on with the job quietly. Beside Naruto was Kushina, who was reading a magazine as she watched her new team completely their mission. This is stupid. How much longer are we going to be doing these stupid chores? Mito called out in a huff as Shikamaru rolled his eyes. Don't roll your eyes at me, lazy ass. Then stop complaining. You have done this for every mission for the last 3 months, he said as he yawned and scratched the back of his head. But it's insulting to do this and it's embarrassing. You know, if you keep complaining it will cause you to get wrinkles, Flatty, Sai said as he gave Mito a creepy smile. Bastard! Mito shouted as she went to lunge at Sai, but Shikamaru stopped her as he tried to keep her from killing their teammate. Come here and say that again. I'll kick your ass. Mito-chan, Kushina called, lowering her magazine to look at her daughter and making Mito stop and look up at her mother. These D ranks all help build up your credit and it will get you closer to obtaining the right to going on a C rank mission. But Ka-chan, Mito whined, but a quickly stern look from Kushina quickly shut her up. Grumbling and kicking the dirt, she went back to picking up litter with a scowl now plastered on her face. Naruto watched them with an amused expression but got a flick on the ear from Kushina. Don't you have anything better to do than rile up your little sister? She said, raising an eyebrow at him. The response she got was a shrug. It's too much fun and she is so easy to tease. Besides, it's the job of the older shinobi to tease the freshies. You probably did the same when you were in my position, he said to her as she got a faraway look on her face. That was true since she could remember teasing Minato's students Kakashi, Obito, and Rin when they were a team together. Even though Kakashi graduated much earlier than the other two, they still had to do D ranks. Don't you have a mission today? She asked as she looked down at her son again, who went back to teasing his little sister who was trying to give him the scariest glare she could muster. Yeah, but it's not for another hour. Besides, I already have everything packed, he said as he pointed to the scrolls on his hip and the seals on his arms. Okay then, Kushina said, going off the topic before she went on to a completely new. So are there any girls that interest you? She asked as Naruto looked up at her in surprise. That was not something he really wanted to discuss with his mother. It was a little too weird. Where is this going? He thought before answering her. No, Ka-chan, no girls right now. I'm happy to just be on my own. Oh, come on now, there must be someone to catch your attention. I hear Mikoto's son is still with that girl from the Nadeshiko village. I can't let Mikoto outdo me again, she said with a fire burning in her eyes that made him shake his head. So that's why. Sorry to disappoint, Ka-chan, but there is no girl right now, so you will have to wait a little longer, Naruto said, making Kushina huff a little before nodding in acceptance. While the idea of some harlot trying to sink their claws into her eldest made her frown and want to bring the pain, she knew if she wanted grandchildren one day that she should have to suck it up. It didn't mean though that she could not help pick and push him in the direction of a girl she approved of. As Kushina looked down at the genin in front of her, Naruto felt a familiar presence sit down beside him. Turning his head, he saw Anko sitting there looking down at the new squad while twirling a kunai in her left hand. Breaking in the new blood? Anko said, grinning, which just made him roll his eyes at his teammate. Thought I would see how they are doing. They have promise, but Mito-chan is being impatient, he said loudly to make sure his sister could hear him. Mito glared back at him with a red face while Anko chuckled. Get used to it, Mito, cause it's not going to change for a while, Anko told her, making Mito huff in annoyance just like Kushina did moments earlier. So I thought you had work today. Was there not enough prisoners to keep you happy and contained? He teased, making Anko slap his arm playfully. I'm on my break and I thought I would come see you before I see Hana-chan. I won't get to see my two favorite people for a couple of days, she told him pouting. But I feel there is another reason that you wanted to speak with me? He asked, seeing the hidden message in his friend's eyes. Anko nodded and leaned in closer towards him. Make sure my girl comes back safe and sound. I don't like it when she goes on missions without me. You know Hana is more than capable of looking after herself, Anko-chan. She is a jonin after all. I know, and I am not saying she is weak by any means. But she is not like you, Itachi and I. She is not quite at the level we are at, and I don't want her to get over her head. You know she can be a little prideful. Hell, I know she can be prideful. In the bedroom it's always a wrestle to see who comes out on top and who gets to be submissive and who gets to be dominant. Naruto waved his hand. Too much information, but I see where you're coming from. He muttered before putting his arm around his longtime friend to reassure her. Normally Anko would have been fine with Hana going on mission, but he guessed that since they were going to Kiri, where a civil war had only just finally ended, it made her a little anxious. I will make sure your girl come back home safe and sound. It's a promise on my way of the shinobi, he said, putting his pinky finger out in front of him. Anko understood the gesture and wrapped her pinky around his. She then leaned in and gave him a peck on the cheek, showing her softer side to one of her true friends. Thank you. Anytime, Anko-chan. I don't make promises I can't keep. The two longtime friends sat and spoke with one another for 5 minutes, with Kushina occasionally leaning in to try and hear what they were saying. Though all the two spoke about was the training schedule for their spars with Itachi, Hana, Hayate and Yugao. Once Anko left to see Hana, Naruto left 20 minutes later after saying goodbye to his mother and sister and headed towards the south gate where he would be meeting with his team. 4 days later, Naruto jumped off the edge of a wooden boat and landed on a small wooden harbor where other small boats were docking and leaving with their various trade goods. He took a look around his surroundings and frowned a little since there was a lot of mist currently covering a lot of the small harbor town. Without his sensor abilities he knew they would be walking blind. Though I don't sense anyone harmful at the moment, we get moving while we can, he thought before he motioned for his two partners behind him to follow after him. Hana quickly followed after with her 3 ninken walking closely to her side and on constant alert, while on her other side was their teammate Hayate. Though Hayate was still sickly and probably always would be, he had really stepped up as a shinobi and proved that he could fight just like everyone else in his age group, and quickly became a prominent member of their generation and someone that many other sickly children could look up to as a role model. While not quite as powerful as his blonde-haired friend, Hayate was well versed in kenjutsu and had a talent for fire jutsu and taijutsu. It made him a strong ally and a problematic enemy. The village hidden in the mist is said to be about 5 hours round this dock site, and we will have to cross a lake on foot to get there, Naruto said as he walked forwards. If we get there before mid-afternoon, then we should be able to avoid needing to stay in the area for too long. Right, that's probably for the best. They may still be antsy with the civil war only just having ended. Hana spoke up. Remember, this is simply a delivery mission. We give the given message scroll to the new Mizukage, wait for the response, and then we leave. We will be in and out of the village within an hour. Could this not be something the Hokage could not just send by hawk? Hayate asked, thinking it would just be easier, but he quickly saw Naruto shake his head. Normally it would be, but seeing as my father has 3 of his jonin delivering it personally, we can only assume that whatever message it contains is of great importance. Both of his friends nodded before the trio checked around them, made sure they had everything before they took off into the nearby trees and traveled along the top of the branches at great speed. Naruto was perched at the front, Hana in the middle and Hayate covering them from the back. They stayed in that formation for 2 hours as they traveled to the village hidden in the mist. Naruto was surprised just how true that name was as they traveled towards their destination. The mist was everywhere and it was so thick that you could barely see in front of you. You barely had at least 2 or 3 meters of clear vision until the mist would set in. Sometimes it was even lower than that. I can't let my guard down for even a second. An ambush or any kind could be waiting for us at any moment. I'm starting to think sending a hawk might have been the better choice. When they estimated that they were at least 2/3 of the way there to the village, both Hayate and Hana stopped immediately when they saw Naruto stopped right in his tracks and had a focused look in his eyes as he scanned around them. What is it? Hayate asked before he noticed Hana and her ninken were growling and sniffing the air. They had smelt something, and whatever it was making them get ready. Hayate, Hana, Manji formation, he called as the trio quickly got back to back while the ninken were stationed left, right and center by Hana with their jaws snapping at the air. How many? Naruto scanned his surroundings and felt 6 people all around them. From what he could tell, they were all stationed at various points and at different heights. 6 at least. Be careful. They have the home field advantage here and they know how to use the mist. No action unless given cause to. When he finished speaking, something twirling through the air could be heard coming towards them. Before Hana and Hayate could react, Naruto had already drawn Shusui from his back and struck a large demon shuriken that was aimed right at him. The broken parts of the shuriken split into 2 and embedded themselves in a nearby tree. Whoa, Hayate said at how quickly his friends reacted before they heard quick steps coming towards them. Attack! They looked up to see a shinobi wearing an umbu-like mask drop down right in the center of them with a blade drawn out. I got him, Hayate said as he unsheathed his blade and clashed with the shinobi and managed to push him away. From the front, Naruto's attention turned in front of him and sensed 3 people coming towards him while 2 more were headed for Hana. Suitan, Suidan no Jutsu. He heard before he slammed his hands onto the ground and performed his own jutsu. Doton, Doriahiki, he called as a large wall formed in front of him. Hana 2 coming for you from your left, he called as Hana nodded and quickly spotted them with her enhanced sensitive smell. Her eyes became more canine-like and her nails got more feral as she went down onto all 4 with her Ninken stationed with her. Fong over Fong, she whispered before lunging through the air as Naruto engaged the 3 hunter-like shinobi that jumped over the earth-made wall. The attack made Hana twirl in the air with her Ninken and it looked like a horizontal tornado was ripping through the air. She drew closer towards the 2 attacking shinobi and slammed into one, successfully hitting him in the chest and destroying his lungs and heart, while the other managed to sidestep out of the way and drew a sword. Hana landed on her feet and gripped a kunai tightly in her hands. Above them, Hayate was battling previous attacking Kiri ninja and was holding himself well and was making ground against his enemy. Cough, who are, cough, you? He asked, but the shinobi chose not to answer and continued to attack. Their swords caused sparks to fly off when the metal connected. Hayate ducked from a swift strike from the shinobi and brought up his blade to block another strike. Hayate continued to dodge and could see from his opponent's movements that he was getting more and more frustrated at not being able to land a hit on his foe. His movements were getting more sloppy and his swings were getting slower. Are you with Kiri or the new Godain Mizukichi? Hayate asked, but all he got was angry strikes back at him. Cough, so be it. Meanwhile, Naruto glared at 2 of the enemy shinobi who had a sword each gripped in their hands. The 3rd meanwhile was currently stuck in a headlock in Naruto's right arm. Both arms were broken from where he tried to rush. A strong punch to the gut quickly incapacitated his enemy before he snapped their neck with an extreme amount of force. Since I'm trying to get to Kiri quickly, I'm going to make this quick. I really don't have the time of the patience to have to deal with you right now, he said as he drew out Shigure as well and held both blades in front of him. He then watched as the 2 Umbu out-teamed him and flew forward. His swords clashed with his opponents and watched as they tried to push him back. Their other hands came up to take a swing at Naruto, but he easily dodged them with a bored expression on his face. Have to do better than that, he told them as his foot glowed green and he slammed his foot into the ground. Cracks formed on the ground as a mini earthquake suddenly hit the area, making everyone stumble in surprise, especially the 2 Umbu that he was fighting. A huge crater formed from where Naruto had slammed his foot and cracked all along the ground around 6 inches wide began to form. Taking chance of the opportunity, he brought Shigure up into the air. He jumped up into the air as well and slashed down on the surprised Umbu. Hiryu, Kane. The moment he slashed his opponent and watched them fall back as the attack did its supposed damage, the Umbu member burst into flames as he choked out blood from underneath his mask. Bastard, he heard the other Umbu call out as he pushed forward as a dragon made of water shot forward towards Naruto with its large red eyes boring into Naruto as it raced forward. Naruto narrowed his eyes and gripped both Shigure and Shusui tightly in his hands and held them to the side as he closed his eyes. Yakidori! He muttered as he swung both his swords together at the same time as a large slash of compressed air formed from the slash that were so dense that the slash made a crescent moon-shape object that sailed towards the attack at great speed. The moment it connected, the water dragon split right down the middle and dispersed to the sides of Naruto, narrowly avoiding him and destroying the few trees that were behind him. Naruto then pushed off from the ground and appeared in front of the Umbu as he was in the middle of performing hand signs. At least he was, until the Umbu suddenly found his hands flying in the other direction courtesy of Naruto cutting them off. Before the Umbu could even say a word, Naruto brought his right foot up and kicked the Umbu high into the air, breaking his jaw on the process. Pumping chakra into his legs, Naruto jumped high into the air and was back to facing the Umbu, who looking in incredible pain. Checkmate, Naruto told the Umbu before he pumped chakra into his right leg and with a powerful super strength kick. The kick connected with the man's head and sent his head sailing through the air and into the mist-filled valley while his body dropped to the ground lifelessly. Naruto then fell to the ground doing a backflip as he did and landed on top of a tree branch before he casually walked down the tree and placed Shigure and Shusui back into their sheaths and back to being sealed into his arms. He dusted off his jacket as he looked up into the air and watched Hayate flip through the air still battling his foe, while to his left he saw Hana performing a second Fang over Fang on her opponent and saw that it connected. The attack sent the Umbu flailing through the air and slammed right into a tree hard. Naruto whistled and nodded before he felt two new signs appear around them. One felt hostile like the other Umbu while another felt curious and more calm than the others. The hostile one, however, he sensed appeared behind Hana. A glint of metal caught Naruto's eye from the mist and saw a barely visible human shape appear. Hana thought was none the wiser as she checked her foe's pulse, and Naruto pushed himself forward, intent on keeping his promise to Anko. Hana knelt by the Umbu and checked his pulse and sighed when she felt he was defiantly dead. It happened so quickly she was not even sure what happened. The moment she turned around she saw the familiar shapes of shurikens and kunai get thrown towards her at a fast rate. She wanted to move, but using multiple Fang over Fang had taken it out of her, along with the triplets who were each panting a little. Doing what she could, she brought up her arms to protect herself while the triplets tried to pull her out of the way by pulling on her bottoms but were not having any luck. Before they could hit, however, she watched as the back of Naruto's head appeared in front of her and watched him catch the shuriken in midair before throwing them right back towards the hidden enemy at an even faster rate. The kunai he blocked with his sword Shigure and sent them so they were embedded in the trees. "You alright, Hana-chan?" he asked, turning around seeing Hana's stunned look on her face and watched her nod her head as she took deep breaths. "I'm okay. Thank you, Naruto-kun," she said with Naruto nodding back at her. She was disappointed in herself that she froze up that way and let someone get the drop on her. She should have smelled him coming, but she was captivated in making sure her opponent was dead that she and triplets let their guard down. "Try and keep your senses open at all times, Hana-chan. I would hate to have to tell Anko-chan that something happened to you," he told her and saw her nod, looking upset with herself, but that quickly changed when she noticed that Naruto had a kunai embedded in his left shoulder. "Hold still," she said softly as she walked close towards him and pulled out the kunai from his shoulder. She saw his hand get brought up to heal the wound, but he was stopped when she placed her own on there first. Her hands glowed green and Naruto felt the wound slowly begin to heal up. "It's the least I can do. Just because I can heal animals doesn't mean I don't have some skill in healing people too. Tsunade-sama was nice enough to show me a few tricks." Naruto nodded and turned his head when he saw Hayate sheathing his sword away with a few cuts on his body but nothing serious. Behind him though, Naruto saw the man that he had felt earlier, and now looking at him, Naruto had to admit he looked and felt strangely familiar. A familiar mask covered his face with familiar navy blue hair that stood up with tags pierced onto each of his ears. He stood looking at the man before he walked over to him and stopped just in front of him. "Are you friend or foe?" Naruto asked, tensing his body as this man was a rogue like the other shinobi they had just faced. Behind him, Hana and Hayate stood closely behind Naruto and kept a close eye on the man in front of them. "Are you the leaf shinobi that the Hokage sent to meet with the new Godame Mizukage?" he asked and saw Naruto nod his head. "Yes, we are." "So you're a friend then?" Now the Umbu nodded and removed his mask, revealing a man in his late 30s with an eye patch covering his right eyes. "My name is Ao, Umbu, captain of Kiri and right-hand man of the new Mizukage," he told them. "I was told by Mizukage-sama to meet you before you got to the village, but I see you encountered problems." Naruto examined the man and he felt what was behind the eye patch. A Byakugan. With that discovery he remembered where he saw this man last. The day he fought Raiga Kurisuke, he was the Umbu that Naruto gave the twin swords to as long as her got to keep the body of Raiga. "Yes, you could say something like that," Naruto said, looking around at the bodies before telling Hana and Hayate to pile them up and burn the bodies. "Who are they?" "They are remnants of the Yonde Mizukage Yagura's forces. Despite Yagura being dead, he still has troops loyal to him and believing in his cause to wipe out those with bloodlines. There is team out looking for these people as we speak, but I will have to send a messenger hawk ordering them back." Naruto nodded and they watched as Hayate performed a fire jutsu and set the bodies ablaze. "Come, I will guide you the rest of the way to Kiri. These paths can be treacherous, as I'm sure you youngsters have already noticed," he said before he took off through the trees. "Try to keep up, otherwise you might take a nasty fall." The three raised their eyebrow at the older shinobi before they took off after him along the trees. The journey with Ao leading them took about half the time, with the veteran shinobi leading the way and took them the safest way towards Kiri. Once they got to the end of the island they were on, they water ran the rest of the way towards Kiri, and eventually they came across the village hidden in the mist. This was the first time any of them had gone to the mist village, and they quickly deduced it was definitely one of the more naturally protected by the elements around it and deserved the title Hidden in the Mist. The name was well earned, and despite its size they could still barely see it. As they got closer the visibility got clearer, but with the mist and the cold temperature it felt like they were walking into a completely different world. Walking through the gates the mist seemed to clear and the people and the building became clearer. Men, women and children were walking about the village going on with their day while shinobi patrolled the roofs. Taking the leaf shinobi to see the Mizukage, Ao stated towards the two gates guard, who lazily nodded to the man. Naruto had to guess this village had their own versions of Izumo and Kotetsu. Damn upstarts. Ao complained as they ventured their way through the village. Looking at the village the trio were surprised at how familiar to the leaf village it was. The building's designs were very familiar and the civilians wore similar clothing though thicker due to the cold weather. They saw some of the shinobi looking at them from the rooftops, obviously keeping an eye on them. Naruto couldn't blame them since the leaf village would probably do the same thing when they visitors from others' villages in their homes. Along the buildings Naruto saw a lot of the buildings had been damaged and were currently under reconstruction along with new construction site in various places. Many were being made out of stone and large rock-like materials. From what he could gather it looked like apartment buildings were being built for their shinobi. They were still rebuilding and gathering their strength after the civil war had ended 6 months ago. With the new Mizukage whoever they were, Kiri had managed to set up a new council and government as well as bring in the civilians and shinobi that fled from the village at the start of the civil war. Eventually after a 15-minute walk they came to a large building similar to the Hokage building and they knew they had arrived to the residence of the Mizukage. Entering inside Ao nodded to the guards before he took them up a flight of stairs and stopped at the 3rd floor. "Chojuro, is Mizukage-sama in?" Ao asked as they entered a reception's office and they saw a blue-haired teen with a large sword covered in bandages just exiting the Mizukage's office. They guessed he was either their age or at least a year younger. He looked a little nervous and timid when Ao began speaking with him and it looked like he had a blush on his face when he walked out the office. "Hi Ao-senpai. Are these the leaf shinobi?" he asked nervously, looking over at the trio who gave him a small wave, trying to be polite and friendly. "They are Chojuro," he said before turning serious to the younger shinobi. "Chojuro, I need you to go the messenger Hawk Pei and send out a message to Squad 5. Tell them the group they are tracking have already been found and dealt with and they are to return home." They saw Chojuro look over at towards them and saw him focus in on Naruto before he yelped back in surprise. "The Yondaime Hokage's son," he said, panicked to their surprise before Ao got his attention back to him with a glare. "Hi senpai. I'll get right on it," he said and hurried out of the room, nervously avoiding Naruto as he went by. "What was that all about?" Naruto asked with a raised eyebrow before hearing Ao snort. "Why do you think? Did you not see the giant sword on his back?" Ao asked, further confusing them before Ao knocked on the door in front of them while nodding to the receptionist behind the desk. Naruto, Hana and Hayate all heard a soft voice telling them to come in as Ao pushed the door open and ushered them to come in. Stepping, both Naruto and Hayate understood what had Chojuro so red and flushed in appearance. The Mizukage, who was sat behind a desk doing paperwork, was easily one of the most beautiful women that either of them had seen. She had a slender build with green eyes, an ankle-length, auburn hair styled into a herringbone pattern at the back, a top knot tied with a dark blue band, and with 4 bangs at the front. 2 bangs are short, with one covering her right eye, and 2 are long, crossing each other on her bust, just below her chin. She wore a long sleeves blue shirt that left her shoulders and the very top of her breasts exposed. Underneath, she wears a mesh armor and leggings with a dark-colored pair of shorts covering everything above the thighs. Naruto did everything he could to hide a blush, but it was not working out too well. Hayate did not even bother trying to hide it and looked ready to faint at any moment. Even Hana looked a little hot and bothered by her. However, despite his blush, when Naruto looked at her he felt like he knew her from somewhere. She resembled a certain someone in his life and it was intriguing him. "Thank you Ao," she said in a silky voice as Ao nodded and took his spot behind her and leaned against the wall. She then turned to face them with a polite smile on her face. Despite appearances, this woman was the Mizukage for a reason and knew that they should be on their guard just in case. My name is Mei Terumi, the Godane Mizukage of Kirigakure. I hope you all had a safe journey to our village. I would hate if the leaf found out any of you were hurt in any way. I formally welcome you to our lovely village, said politely as the trio gave her a bow. Especially you, Naruto-san. I am surprised the Hokage sent his eldest to come and see me, so you know who I am then? He asked as she motioned for him to take a seat while Hana and Hayate stood up behind him. Behind her desk the Mizukage chuckled. Naruto-san, you will find that in Kiri you have become something of a legend here, she told him. In the last 5 years you have fought and killed 2 of Kiri's 7 swordsmen. One of which was a low A class and the other a high A class shinobi. You have many of our shinobi tense and nervous when you entered through the gates, I'm sure. He nodded before realizing what Ao meant with Chojuro. He guessed the kid he met was a 7 swordsman in training. Though he was unsure which sword it was he was carrying. Is that why Kiri still has a dead or alive bounty on my head? He asked and just saw Mei continue to smile at him. I may have forgotten to get rid of that, she said sweetly. That was mainly Yagura being paranoid. He didn't like the idea of youngsters like you becoming so powerful at such a young age. He nodded though was unsure if he believed her. He guessed her shinobi side was being covered up by this sweet and sultry mask she had created. As true as that may sound, we won't have a problem here, will we? I don't feel like losing my head anytime soon, Naruto stated with Mei just continuing to smile at him as his hand rested on the seal that Shusui was sealed in. Behind her Mei knew Ao was tensing and preparing himself, but she waved him off, signaling that it was okay with Naruto doing the same for Hana and Hayate, who were on guard and preparing themselves. I'm glad that we understand one another, Mei-sama. I hope you don't mind me calling you Mei-sama, he said with Mei shaking her head. Not at all, Naruto-san. I have never been one for honorifics, she stated as he nodded, though Ao rolled his eyes, thinking his Mizukage should not be acting so nonchalant with the foreigners. That's good to hear. Well, in any case we should just get this over with, he said as he put his left over his right wrist and channeled chakra into a small storage scroll. A small pop sound was heard and a bit of smoke before Naruto revealed a scroll in his hands. This is from our Yondaime Hokage for your eyes and your eyes only, he said seriously as he handed the scroll over to the Mizukage. Mei readily took it and everyone watched her take on a more serious look as she opened the scroll and slowly began to read it. The team of Leaf Shinobi sat quietly in the office as they waited for a response from the beautiful Mizukage. Behind Mei, Ao was trying to look over her shoulder and Naruto even suspected he was tempted to use his Byakugan to read what it said. But one look from Mei made him go pale and look away. 5 minutes later Naruto, Hana and Hayate watched as Mei finished writing a response back to the Hokage in a similar-looking message scroll before sealing it up and handing it over to Naruto. This is my response to the Hokage. In short, you can tell him I accept the proposal, but give him the scroll for a more detailed answer. Naruto nodded and watched as Mei leaned back in her chair and stared at him. Staring right back at her as he sealed it away into his wrist, he narrowed his eyes as his earlier thoughts about her came back. Why does she look so familiar, he thought as he looked her over. The hair and the jade green eyes were entirely new on him, but it was the skin tone and the shape of her face that bothered him. It was on the edge of his tongue, but it kept evading him. Namikaze-san, I ask that you stop staring at the Mizukage. Ao spoke up roughly as Naruto was brought out of his thoughts while Mei had a small grin on her face, mentally cheering that at 36 she could still make young men fall for her looks and charms. Her generosity of being partners with the Leaf will only go so far, so don't get any ideas. He spoke, not noticing Mei's hair suddenly fall in front of her eyes, shadowing them over. Partners? As in a wife and husband? She thought glumly before turning back to look at Ao. Shut up, Ao, or I'll kill you, she told him in a bittersweet voice that made Ao look like he had just been kicked in the crotch and have an aura of fear wrap around him like a blanket. Scary, everyone thought, while unbeknownst to everyone else Naruto's eyes widened in size as realization hit him and began realization who this woman reminded him of. The hair and eyes might be different, but some of the mannerisms and the way she speaks are the same with her. If I have her grow her hair out like Mei-san's, then they would almost match, he thought before he decided to put it to the back of his mind for now. If that will be all, that perhaps it's time we left, Naruto spoke as he stood up, trying to stick with the plan of not staying in the village for more than an hour. Of course, Naruto-san, Mei responded as she too stood up. Just as she did though, they all heard a tap on the window, and turning around they all saw a Konoha messenger hawk by the window. Confused and surprised, she opened the window and took out the little message the bird carried before offering it to Naruto. It's addressed to you, she said, surprised, as did Naruto and the other Leaf Shinobi. Taking the message, he opened it up and scanned the contents laid out by his father. Everyone watched as they saw a confused look turn from an angry look until it settled on a grinning look as he nodded his head. "Do you have a piece of paper and a pen I could use, Mei-sama?" he asked, with Mei nodding and handing over some paper and ink from her drawer. Quickly writing a response, he replied back the message, and sending the hawk back off to Konoha, he turned around towards Hana and Hayate. It seems Kakashi and his genin team ran into some trouble in Wave Country. We've been instructed to go help them, he said, with Hana and Hayate quickly nodding. They were both about to leave but saw Naruto staying put and turned to look at Mei. "My father wrote in the message that this could be a good chance to test out the possible alliance between Kiri and Konoha," he stated as he handed the note over to a surprised-looking Mei Terumi, who began to examine the message. A moment later, a look of realization came to her face as well as surprise before she turned to look at Naruto with a big smile on her face. "Yes, Naruto-san. I think this will work out perfectly," she stated as they grinned at one another, leaving the others in the room to wonder just what they were talking about. A few minutes later, Naruto stood in an alley just outside of Mizukage Tower. He bite his thumb and goes through some familiar hand signs before saying, "Kuchios no Jutsu." A small white tiger cub with bright green eyes appeared in a puff of smoke, who purred the minute it saw Naruto. Naruto, sending another message to Gaia, "I still haven't told anyone about that yet, but yes I am," he replied, putting a scroll in the cub's mouth before she disappeared again, leaving a smiling Naruto behind. Chapter 24. Wave. Standing in front of a nice little 3-bedroom house, Naruto knocked against the wooden door as Hana and Hayate stood on his left and right side. The triplets were stationed between Hana and himself, all three sniffing the area and making sure there were no enemy signatures around to cause problems. Since Wave Country was not all that far from Water Country, it only took them about 2 days to arrive at the Merchant Country. Wave Country was a country where they had no shinobi of their own since they had their own natural defenses. The country was a simple trading country that many of the minor countries and a few major countries did business with. It was not often that they got requests from Wave Country since the country overall was normally a very quiet yet peaceful place. From behind the wooden door, Naruto heard a few voices suddenly cease and go silent. Light footsteps were then heard coming closer to the door until stopping with the door sliding open. Standing in front of him was a beautiful woman with dark hair that looked to be in her early 30s, dressed in a pink blouse and a dark blue skirts. Behind her he could see an older man in his 60s sitting at a small table with a glass of sake in front of him. "May I help you?" she asked politely, looking at the newcomers but having an idea of who they were given their headbands. "Hello miss. My name's Naruto and these are my teammates Hana and Hayate. We are from Konoha and were told to arrive at this location by our Hokage after receiving a requiring backup letter from Kakashi Hatake," Naruto told her, and saw the recollection appear in her eyes before she nodded. "Please come in," she welcomed them, stepping to the side and allowing them entry into their home. The home was cozy and comfortable and was definitely one of the better-looking houses from what he had seen from the town so far. It showed that the area had fallen on very hard times. As soon as they walked in and entered the small dining room, Naruto saw Eiji sitting by the small table reading one of the books their father had given him about Fuinjutsu. Hearing their footsteps, Eiji looked up, where his face brightened tenfold when he saw his older brother walk into the room. He got up and quickly hugged his older brother tightly, which was reciprocated by Naruto. "I'm glad you're here," he heard Eiji whispered, whereas Naruto patted his on the shoulder. While Eiji would not admit it freely, he had been spooked big time, but the arrival of one of the 7 ninja swordsmen, Zabuza, had scared the life out of him. The man was the definition of dangerous and was able to go toe-to-toe with Kakashi of all people. They had only managed to still be alive because he and Sasuke were lucky enough to free Kakashi after he got caught. The other 2 members of the team, Sasuke and Sakura, were both sitting around the table as well. Sasuke was looking out the window with a brooding look plastered on his face, while Sakura was staring at Sasuke with an adoring look. "Fangirl" was the only though that ran through the heads of Naruto, Hana and Hayate as Naruto put his arm over his little brother's shoulder. "Are you okay? It scared me a little to hear my little brother encountered Zabuza Momochi of all people. Are you hurt anywhere?" he asked, and saw Eiji shake his head negatively. "I'm okay, but Kakashi-sensei is upstairs in bed. He overused his Sharingan in the fight and has been bedridden for the last 2 days." For the next 10 minutes he listened to Eiji as he explained what had happened when they left Konoha for their supposed C-rank mission. Only 3 hours after they had set off, they had been attacked by the Demon Brothers, 2 well-known thugs of Zabuza. They were only C-rank criminals in the bingo books, but it was more than enough for a couple of genin. Eiji and Sasuke had managed to protect the client until Kakashi appeared and took them out after observing who they were after. Though Naruto had wished Kakashi had taken his brother and his team back to the village, he couldn't fault them for wanting to continue the mission. Though Kakashi should have known that someone like Zabuza must have been lying in wait. After 3 days had passed and arriving on the banks of Wave Country where they were met by Zabuza, who immediately began to battle Kakashi. From what Eiji described to him, it was intense before Kakashi fell into a trap and got himself caught, only to later be freed from the combined teamwork of Eiji and Sasuke. Naruto wanted to berate Eiji, but he knew he would have done something similar if the situation had been reversed. So he just patted him on the shoulder, getting a happy grin from Eiji. He swore even Sasuke's mouth twitched upwards for even a moment. Kakashi then fought Zabuza again before eventually defeating Zabuza with his own move. But before he could land a final blow, a masked Nin who apparently was a hunter Nin from Kyuubi arrived and took him out before leaving with the body. Naruto turned to looked at Hana and Hayate, and he could see that both knew something was wrong with what they just heard. Considering where they just came from, he knew there were no Kyuubi hunter Nins currently out looking for Zabuza. The Mizukage had already told them that this was first time they had heard from about Zabuza in over a year, and that all their hunter Nins were still stationed in Kyuubi, helping to train the next generation of hunter Nins. That was no hunter Nin, Hana told them as she patted one of her 3 dogs on the head. Eiji, Sasuke and Sakura turned their heads towards her. We just came from Kyuubi and a meeting with the Mizukage. She has no hunter Nins currently searching for Zabuza. They heard Sakura gasp. But then who was that person with the mask? Most likely, someone working with Zabuza, Hayate answered. He has been gone a long time. It's not surprising Zabuza may have found some new additions to his little group. Eiji-kun, where did the hunter Nin hit him exactly? Where on the body? Hana asked, with Eiji telling them he was hit twice in the neck with senbon needles. Hana feared this. He was put in a death-like state. Make the heartbeat so shallow that it masks the shinobi still being alive. Zabuza is very much alive and still out there. Naruto ran a hand through his hair and saw Eiji, Sakura and Sasuke look a little fearful at the idea of Zabuza still being alive. He had left a lasting impression on the trio and he couldn't blame them. It was their first mission outside of the village and they ended up running into one of the 7 swordsmen of the mist. We will need to speak to Kakashi about this. But first we need to focus on these 3. No doubt they will be in the firing range since Zabuza and his accomplices will want them gone. Zabuza strikes me as a prideful person. Hana tapped her chin. She didn't know a whole lot of medical ninjutsu, but she knew enough to make her a novice. Thankfully her time with Enko helped her when it came to the human body and what certain effects can happen to them when put in specific states. Zabuza is not dead, but he will need time to heal. He will be bedridden for at least 10 days until he is back at full strength. 2 days have passed since the battle, so that gives us 8 days until he would likely attack again. Which means we have 8 days to whip these guys into shape, Naruto muttered before turning his attention back to Eiji and his team. Have you and your team done much training since you arrived? He asked, and inwardly was not surprised that Eiji shook his head, which was followed by similar head shakes from the other 2 members of Team 7. Naruto pinched his nose before taking a big sigh and looking towards Eiji and his team. Okay, then tell me what Kakashi has been doing with you so far in terms of training. How far have you gotten? Eiji scratched the back of his head nervously, obviously showing a negative sign to the trio of jonin that recently arrived. Kakashi-sensei has been teaching us teamwork skills and had us work on the tree climbing exercises so far, they heard Sakura tell them. They waited for her continue but quickly realized she had already finished. All 3 of them looked at them in disbelief. That's it? That's all he has taught you in a month? He got 3 nods in response to his question. That's ridiculous, Hana piped up, looking less than impressed and angry at the veteran jonin that was leading these 3 genin. That is something you should have done in your first week. Why is that all you have learnt? Kakashi-sensei is always 3 hours late, Sakura told them as she twiddled her thumbs on her lap. We do an hour of teamwork exercises and then we go to D-rank missions. After that he tells us to go home. Naruto and Hana both felt like pulling their hair out while Hayate shuffled away from them. Good for nothing scarecrow, the both muttered before Naruto took an empty scroll out from one of the seals on his arm and put it on the table. He then pulled out a brush and ink. Alright, I'm going to be straight with you 3, he told them as the 3 13-year-olds looked at him. Right now you are way behind where you should be. Eiji and Sasuke might be ahead given their clan training, but you Sakura aren't where you should be. Sakura looked down, disappointed in herself as she nodded. She knew she was the weakest in the group despite being the smartest. But the three of you should be further along, and it was Kakashi's job to ensure you got the right training. Obviously he has not done that, which means for the next 8 days you three will be working your asses off. Understand? He told them and saw all three of them nod. Eiji looked happy, Sasuke had a tiny grin on his face while Sakura had a determined look appear on her face. Have all three of you completed the tree walking exercise? Hana asked as she planned on helping Naruto with the training plan for them. All three nodded their heads, which was a relief to the three jonin. Then we can start on the next exercise. Naruto told them. Hey, every morning I want you to teach them the water walking exercise. That will improve their chakra control and their reserves. You three will do that every morning until you can do the exercise without even thinking about it. The trio nodded, though Sasuke looked a little miffed that he had to listen to his brother's friends. In the afternoon we will focus on your individual skills and raise them up. If I think it's possible, we might even teach you guys a new jutsu or two. Understand? The three genin nodded their heads while Tazuna and Tsunami, who had simply watched and listened for the last 30 minutes, were impressed at how quickly Naruto had taken control. Tazuna stood up as he prepared to leave for the bridge and continue with its construction. Since it's still morning, you three will go out with Hayate and begin the water walking exercise. Hayate, don't let them come back until they can stand on the water for at least 30 seconds. Will, do, Hayate responded as he stood up and ushered for the genin to follow him. The trio left, each looking excited and determined and obviously happy they were getting some real training, though Sasuke did glare at Naruto for a few moments but quickly got moving when Naruto gave him a look indicating him to get ass moving. Being a jonin had its perks when it came to the genin. As they left, Naruto made 2 shadow clones. Tazuna-san, these clones will go with you to the bridge and keep guard for you. I promise nothing will get past them, he told Tazuna, who nodded his head in gratitude as he left after saying goodbye to his daughter. Once everyone left, Hana looked at Naruto irately and slammed a hand down on the table. What the hell was Kakashi thinking? What was the Hokage thinking? They should have been sent straight back to the village the moment they ran into the demon brothers. How could Kakashi be so foolish? Let's go and find out, Naruto told her as they both stood up and walked up the flight of stairs with Naruto in front and Hana following closely behind. Hana was beyond furious. She and Kiba might not see eye to eye right now, but it didn't mean she stopped caring about him. If she found out that her little brother had run into a shinobi with the caliber of Zabuza Momochi, she would have been irate and would be calling for Kakashi's head. She knew Naruto long enough to know when he was angry. And by the look in his eye she could tell Kakashi, and to an extent his father, had really angered him. 20 minutes later, a sleepy and exhausted Kakashi woke up having dreamed of beautiful girls in bikinis in a large hot tub. He groaned and went to sit up but instead felt a weight on his chest. Blinking the sleepers out of his eyes, he looked up to see Hana's 3 ninken with their paws on his chest, snarling at him. He gulped before his face went pale when he noticed Naruto and Hana sitting with their backs to the wall and both with their arms crossed. Both had narrowed eyes and he could have sworn he heard Naruto's knuckles cracking. So I'm guessing you're the backup? Kakashi asked timidly. Neither gave him an answer before Hana slammed the door closed and he watched Naruto activate silencing seals around the room. Outside, Hayate watched as Eiji, Sasuke, and Sakura continued to fall into the ice-cold water, oblivious to what was happening inside. He was having too much fun watching the genin fall into the water like suckers. The trio shook in their wet clothes, oblivious to the beating and scolding their sensei was being given. Next day, Naruto stood in the makeshift training field he and Hana had made for the 3 genin as they stood off to the side and watched Eiji, Sakura and Sasuke run laps around the field, each looking a little different than the other. Hayate was currently guarding the bridge builder with Kakashi, who was walking around thanks to the Shosen Jutsu. Eiji looked relatively okay thanks to his Uzumaki stamina with only a light sweat on his forehead. Sasuke trailed slightly behind a few paces, looking a bit more out of breath than his blonde-haired teammate but was still able to keep up the pace. And then trailing behind was Sakura, whom the 2 boys had managed to lap twice already and looked ready to collapse at any moment. Since yesterday they had watched the trio of genin and cooked up a familiar training regimen that each would perform each day in hopes that their strength and skills will be improved enough to help with the incoming threat of Zabuza. Eiji Naruto knew well enough, since his range of skills and moves were similar to their father in that he relied more on speed than power and preferred taijutsu and his tri-pronged kunai in combat situations. He and Mito were alike in that they were close mid-range fighters. He had Eiji focus on his speed and used weight seals on his legs and arms. He had him spar with a shadow clone of his. Sasuke was a little different in that his was more a ninjutsu fighter, and with his fire jutsu and taijutsu prowess, he could switch ranges from long distance to close up. So Naruto had asked him what fire jutsus he knew and had him practice 2 new katan jutsu. He told Sasuke every time he mastered a katan jutsu he would give him one more while they were on the mission. Sasuke had tried to push his luck but got quickly put in his place when Naruto twisted his arm behind him and shoved him to the ground, reminding him who his superior was. Sakura though was by far the worst in terms of physical skills. The girl was smart for sure and her chakra control was impressive, but that was due to her reserves being so tiny. She would get tired too easily and had told them she was on a diet so she could keep her figure. Naruto had face-palmed big time while Hana was left incensed. She told him she would deal with Sakura and would personally train the girl. If there was one thing Hana had picked up from her girlfriend, it was a deep hatred for fangirls. "Keep moving, Pinky, or I'm setting the triplets on your ass," Hana shouted to Sakura when the pink-haired girl had stopped to take a breather. Sakura turned her head to look at them but quickly set off running again when the triplets snarled at her. Hana huffed in annoyance before turning to look at Naruto, who was grinning at her. "What are you grinning at, blondie? Who knew my lovely Enko-chan would have such an effect on you? Tell me, when's the wedding?" he asked and saw her blush like a tomato before swatting his arm. "Shut up, you blonde idiot. Go and get yourself a girl of your own," she chided him as he chuckled. "But you have taken after Enko so much. I think it's clear who the dominant one in the relationship is," he whispered into her ear, which led to her blushing even brighter in before. Before Naruto could begin to laugh, he felt Hana jump him and grab him in a headlock and drag them to the ground. "Ah, you stupid blonde baka," Hana hissed out while Naruto had now begun laughing. "Hana-chan, wouldn't Enko be jealous of us being so close?" Naruto chuckled out and felt Hana tighten her grip on him. His laughing alerted the 3 genin, who looked over to see Eiji older brother being choked out by Kiba older sister. Eiji looked confused while Sasuke and Sakura were muttering something about stupid older siblings. After another minute of Hana attempting to strangle Naruto to death, she eventually ceased and the two got back up. Naruto grinned at Hana, who huffed in annoyance before she let a small smile appear in her face when she felt Naruto peck her on the cheek. "Big dumb blonde. Do you think they will be ready?" 8 days is not a lot of time, and let's not forget who we are dealing with, Hana asked, since it had been on her mind. While she was confident they could get the genin stronger than they were, she wasn't sure it would be enough. She felt him put his arm around her shoulders and she decided to lean in and enjoy his warmth. Wave country was not the warmest of countries. "I think they will be fine. It's not like we are going to let them face Zabuza after all," he told her, which Hana nodded in relief. "Either I or Kakashi will deal with Zabuza." While Hana didn't like the idea of her childhood friend fighting someone like Zabuza, she had to remember this was the young man that went toe-to-toe with the Sandaime Hokage. If he could hold his own against someone like him, then she knew he would be fine. And the others? Naruto tapped his chin in thought. From how they described the hunter Nin, he or she can't be any older than 15 to 16 years of age. If we train them up enough, then they might be able to handle them. At least Eiji and Sasuke anyway. I think Sakura might be better off just protecting the bridge builder. I agree. I highly doubt she will be ready for 8 days' time. Hana responded as she eyed the pink-haired girl. She has potential, but 8 days won't be enough to bring it out. Once we get back, maybe I could speak with Shizen. Sakura's chakra control is impressive, so she could make a fine Mednin. I hadn't thought of that, Hana said and thoughtfully agreed. Mednins were crucial and too few in number in Konoha. Having a Mednin on any squad was a boon. You think you can handle things here for me, Hana-chan? Naruto asked and saw Hana nod her head, though looked like she wanted to know where he was going. Where are you headed? Into the town. I want to get a good layout of the place and see if I can't get any information out of some of the thugs this Gato has. Hana nodded as she watched Naruto make another clone to held Sasuke and Eiji before he leapt away and made his way into the town. If Naruto was a lesser man, then he would have teared up and broke down as he walked through the streets of Wave. He could feel various emotions building up inside of him, ranging from sadness all the way up to anger. Everywhere he looked he saw people homeless and starving. Their clothes were in rags and all of them looked like they had not showered in weeks. People ranging from the elderly to middle-aged, even to children, were on the streets looking lifeless and hopeless. This Gato, The so-called business tycoon had taken everything from these people. Their homes, their jobs, their food, even friends and family. And knew the man likely did not fee a damn thing as he sat on his expensive chair eating like a king. He saw in what should have been a grocery store only hand scraps of food which all ranged from prices that were too expensive for anyone to afford. He couldn't blame the owners since they were as much victims as everyone else. These people deserve better than this, he whispered while shaking his head. As he passed a corner, his anger spiked even more when he saw two thugs, no doubt two of Gato's hired mercenaries, pushing a young woman in a corner as they stuck their blades to her stomach. Her very pregnant stomach. "You haven't paid up this week, Yuka-chan," the taller of the two mercenaries told the woman as his head got a little too close to the woman and stuck his tongue out to lick the side of her face. "You wouldn't want anything to happen to that whelp in your belly, would you?" The shorter of the two said as he stuck his blade to her stomach, causing the fabric to rip ever so slightly. The woman was crying as her hands tried to protect her large stomach. "Please, I can't afford it. I have nothing left to give," she cried out as hot wet tears began to form in her eyes. Both of the mercenaries grinned perversely at her. "Oh, I can think of something you can give us," the taller of the two told her as his hands went up to her dress and began yanking it down. Before the dress could be pulled all the way down, however, the taller mercenary felt a sharp excruciating pain form in his chest and saw a pool of blood forming beneath him. "What?" He choked out before a blade appeared through his chest and he felt a pair of hands around his neck. The last thing H saw were Naruto's violet eyes before Naruto snapped the man's neck. "Bastard!" The smaller mercenary said, but was stopped immediately with Naruto picking the man up by the throat and smashing his head against the stone building beside them. "Trash," Naruto muttered as he formed a clone to get rid of the bodies. He turned towards the woman who was looking at him in fear, desperately trying to protect her baby with her arms. "It's okay," he told her reassuringly. "I'm not here to hurt you. I just saw what they were going to do to you and stepped in to stop them. I mean you no harm." The woman gulped as she took one step closer but kept her hands on her stomach. "You shouldn't have done that. Gato will find out and he will come for your head," she told him, but was surprised to see him chuckle. "Ma'am, I'm not afraid of this Gato guy. I'm a shinobi, and if he thinks mercenaries and bandits are going to scare me, then he is more stupid than I already think he is. But you..." Naruto stopped her before she could say any more. "Do you have somewhere you can go? Let me walk you home. I don't like the idea of someone in your condition walking home with so many thugs and lowlifes around." She nodded and Naruto told her to lead the way. She tried to protest, telling him she would be fine, but Naruto wouldn't have it. There was no way he would let a pregnant lady who he could tell was very close to her due date run into people like those two thugs again. Not on his watch. For the next 10 minutes he walked beside her, making him look like her protector with the shigure slung across his back as if asking people to just try and pull something. They walked past a few of the mercenaries and they did try to start something. But each time Naruto quickly put them in their place. They made light conversation and found out her name was Yuka and that she worked at one of the orphanages in Wave Country that she ran with a group of women and her husband. However, her husband was unfortunately killed by Gato's thugs when he tried to fight back against the tax Gato put on all of them. She had gone to try and find food, but her pregnancy wouldn't allow her to go very far. "So when are you due?" Naruto asked, looking down towards her stomach and saw the woman rub her belly affectionately. 2 weeks today. I'm supposed to be on bed rest, but with my husband no longer with us, most of the orphanage workers have had to work double time with so little food and the cold nights. It doesn't help that Gato's thugs visit every few days to antagonize us. We do what we can for the children, but there's only so much we can do with the little resources we have." Naruto nodded in understanding as they arrived to a large worn-down looking house and windows with holes and patches on top of the roof. The fences around it was mostly destroyed and the grass and lowers around it were all but dead. "You live here?" Naruto asked and saw Yuka nod sadly. "It used to be such a warm and loving place for the children. But now it's a shadow of itself thanks to Gato," she told him as she pushed the door open. "Since Gato arrived, we now have triple the amount of children living here due to Gato's mercenaries killing parents when they can't pay up." Naruto followed her inside and he quickly felt his heart break when they walked in a large living room with at least a dozen children inside it, wrapped up in blankets and sleeping bags. There were more children in the next room, and with his sensory abilities he could sense there were at least 50 children all cramped inside this one large building with Yuka and 4 other women. "Yuka-san," he heard and saw the children light up when she appeared and saw them all come up to her and cuddle around her. He saw the warm look in her eyes and saw her wrap as many as she could in a hug despite her large stomach. Yuck-san, thanks goodness you're safe, he heard and saw 4 other women appear. 2 were around the same age while the other 2 were at somewhere in their 50s. She quickly told them about her savior and Naruto was quickly showered with gratitude and thanks from the other 4 women and many of the older kids. The younger ones all looked up at him as if he was some kind of superhero. Very quickly the children all crowded around Naruto, and with Naruto being the warm-hearted person he knew he was, he sat on the floor and began entertaining the children with his various shinobi tricks. For the next hour Yuka and the other workers were all smiles as they listened to the children laugh and shout out in amazement as Naruto performed trick after trick, showing them fire shaped like little animals or using the henge to look like something funny. The biggest pop though was when he summoned a few of the younger tiger cubs for the kids to play and cuddle with. They were a big hit and he was happy smiling as watched the little children play and cuddle with them, looking far happier than they did when he first walked in. Once again Naruto's heartstrings were getting pulled when a little girl no older than 4 with dark hair and big brown eyes found herself being drawn more and more towards Naruto. She nestled happily on his lap as she played with one of the cubs. Despite his good deed and keeping the kids entertained, Naruto wanted to do something that lasted and wanted to do something for them to protect them from Gato's thugs and make sure these children and the brave women that looked after them were kept warm. He looked around and he knew that he could definitely do something about the house. It was a wooden house and that immediately gave him an idea. If there was ever a good reason to use it then now would be a perfect time, he thought as he stood up. The little girl who was on his lap pouted, making him laugh before she smiled again when he patted her hair. Yuka-san, how helpful would it be if you had another building for the children to live in? Naruto asked and saw Yuka and the other women look at him funny. It would be extremely helpful since this one is falling apart. She told him and she watched confusion as he got up and saw him head outside towards the back of the house. She waddled after him with the other women in tow along with the children that wanted to see where the cool new superhero was going. I ask that you keep what I'm about to do a secret everyone for the time being, Naruto asked the 5 adults and saw them hesitate for a moment before nodding. Can you kids keep a secret? Yeah! They all shouted, making him laugh. They watched as Naruto made various hand signs before he slammed his hands on the ground. Mokuton, Renchuka no Jutsu. He said as everyone felt the ground beneath them begin to shake and watched in amazement as 4 very large houses suddenly appeared out of the earth, standing in a row and looking as if they had been newly built by the carpenters. Each house was the same size as the current house they were in, only in far better condition. The adults could feel hot tears appearing in their eyes as Naruto turned around grinning at them. I figured these 4 houses would provide enough room for the 5 of you and all the children. None of them have holes in or are damaged in any way, so they will be a lot warmer than this current house. He walked up to one of the houses and knocked against it with his fist. The wood's strong so it won't be damaged very easily. It will take a lot of force to even make a dent in it. I'd say with the room sizes you could easily fit at least 30 kids in each house, so you have plenty of room to spread out. Naruto's grin seemed to wake them all up as the kids who had been awestruck quickly cheered and went running towards the new homes, with the adults quickly following after them, not before each gave him a hug and kiss on the cheek and praised him for being set out of heaven. He saw how happy they all looked and saw a bit of hope return to their previously hopeless eyes. Knowing there was a lot more he could do, Naruto disappeared and headed towards the ocean. They all hoped they would get to see him again, and they got their wish just as the afternoon was coming to a close and the orange sky appeared above them. Who's hungry? They all heard as the adults all came out of each house, having set up an order of who would be in which house and where the children would sleep. If they were teary-eyed before then, they were bawling their eyes out now. They watched as Naruto walk alongside 4 of his clones that he had made earlier to impress the kids. In 2 of the clones' hands they saw large nets full of freshly caught fish. They didn't even wonder how he could carry such a large net of fish all by himself, since they were more awestruck at how many there were in each. There must have been at least 100 fish in each net. Beside them the other 2 clones carried piles and piles of fresh new blankets. Naruto had put a favor in with Kiera and asked if she could get him some warm, comfortable and soft new blankets for the children. The white tiger summons had always been good to him, and they did so again when they fulfilled his request. I've never fished before, so I kind winged it. I hope this is enough, and the blankets are courtesy of our tiger friends. He told them before he found himself dog-piled on by the children, who were all cheering his name while the adults were expressing their undying gratitude for him. There were happy tears all around. Never did they think when they woke up that morning that a stranger from another country would protect Yuka, build 4 new houses out of nowhere for them, catch enough fish for a week's worth of food and bring them all dozens of new blankets for them to keep warm. He had one of his clones make a large stone pit where they could cook the fish since there were no kitchens currently in the houses. Even he couldn't make kitchens appear out of thin air. They all sat down and cooked the fish before they began to chow down as Naruto kept the children entertained again. "So this is where you disappeared too?" They all heard as they gathered around the fire as Hana appeared with her 3 ninken by her side. She had gotten worried when he never returned for dinner at Tsunami's home and went off to find him with Hey-8 remaining behind with Team 7, Tazuna and his family. Everyone was beginning to wonder where you were. She knew he would not have been in trouble since Naruto could take care of himself. But she knew that her friend no doubt found some new project to diverge on. "Hey Hana-chan," he spoke with a mouthful of freshly cooked fish, making a few of the kids around him giggle at him. Hana looked around and saw all the happy faces and quickly smirked at the blonde man. "I'm guessing this is your doing?" She asked and saw him nod his head happily as her 3 ninken went and sat beside some of the children and let them pet them. "Naruto-nyakin is the best," she heard all of the kids say as they happily munched on the fish, quickly showing how hungry they were. Each kid had at least 3 helpings. Even the younger kids devoured their food like little monsters and the caretaker spent a good few minutes wiping the younger ones' faces. Naruto felt one of the younger children poke him in the arm and was pointing towards Hana, who by now had come to stand beside Naruto. "Oni-chan, is she your this?" she asked as she pointed to the ring finger. "She's really pretty." It took only a moment for both of them to understand what she was asking as Naruto threw his head back laughing and Hana blushed and quickly shook her head. No sweetie, we're just friends." "Good friends, that's all," Hana told the little girl who just looked at her absent-mindedly. Though Naruto leaned down and whispered something in the girl's ear that made her begin giggling. "What are you saying to her?" Hana inquired, but Naruto just grinned back and winked at her. "Naruto, seriously, what did you say?" Hana asked again, but Naruto just continued to grin until he saw Hana's feral annoyed look on her face and saw her go to swat him in the head. Naruto though ducked it and jumped away onto one of the roofs, getting everyone's attention. "You really want to know, Hana-chan?" he asked and saw Hana nod her head and getting an impatient look appear on her face as well. "I just told her you're secretly in love with me and that you've been trying to get me in your bed for a long time." He began laughing and quickly ducked and rolled out the way as Hana lunged at him with a great burst of speed, her eyes narrowed and slitted showing. Her body shook with annoyance and anger before taking off after Naruto when he began to move. "Don't deny our love, Hana-chan. We can be together forever." Naruto laughed out as he dodged a swipe from Hana as she chased after him, fully intending to beat him into the ground. Around the fires the children and adults all laughed at the interaction as Naruto narrowly avoided Hana's attack as he laughed out loud. He was thanking Kami above that Enko wasn't here. Chapter 25. "Are you both ready?" Naruto asked as he stood side by side with Hana and Hey-8 as they stood high above the ground on the treetops. Down below they looked down upon a large hidden hideout 5 miles away from the main town in Wave Country. The past 7 days the trio had spent in Wave Country. They had spent both helping the town and ensuring the genin team AG was ready for a confrontation with Zabuza and his accomplice. In town, Naruto's multiple clones continued fishing in the harbor and feeding the town with what he caught. It put smiles on the face of many people and it kept them fed each day, which was a step up from their previous situation. He helped with their food as much as they could, but he knew money was what would ultimately help this town. And they needed lots of it. Secretly he had used his Mokuton to build more houses. A few here and there to prevent suspicion from the others. Now was not the right time to reveal the power he somehow inherited from the Shodaime Hokage. At Tsunami home, Hey-8 and Hana had helped the genin team while Hana had focused her time on Sakura. The girl was truly pitiful but was at least making steps to improve her physical abilities. You couldn't have just brains in the shinobi world. The brawn was needed just as much. For that they got Sakura's stamina up while making progress on making her chakra reserves larger. Hopefully sense had finally been knocked into the girl. At least that's what they all hoped anyway. They managed to at least get rid of this stupid diet the girl was on. With Sasuke and Eiji, the two had been taught how to walk on water. Once they did so, they were told to spar with one another, learning to control their chakra to keep them on top of the water while trying to focus on their opponent at the same time. It took a while, but eventually they finally got there. They would train Sakura in the water walking exercise once her chakra was up to snuff. Then the two boys were told to focus on the jutsu they knew before they were taught a new jutsu. So Naruto had Hey-8 watched over them and practice. This way they could gain better mastery over their jutsu, control the amount of chakra better while enabling them to make them more powerful while using less chakra. Both boys grumbled at that since they thought they were good enough at their jutsu as it was, but a quick spar with Heiei showed them how wrong they were. Naruto was confident that Team 7 could hold the duo down long enough for them to arrive to the bridge. Kakashi was ready, Eiji was ready, Sasuke was ready, and Sakura he hoped was ready. So do you think he's really there? Heiei asked, his eye focused intently on the building. What if everything the guy told us was lies? The trio had spotted a member of Gato's thugs and decided it was time to end Gato's reign in Wave Country once and for all. They had seen the destruction that he had caused and knew that enough was enough. No one, not even a rich man like Gato, would be allowed to get away with such horrendous crimes, killing innocent lives, forcing people out of their homes and rendering people homeless and starving. Naruto would not allow such an evil person to live a moment longer. I know he is. Hana responded, her eyes going all canine-like as she and the triplets growled. I can smell him from up here. The man smells repulsive. I'm actually looking forward to this. You and me both. Naruto responded as he dropped out of the tree tops and marched towards the hideout. Do you think Zabuza and the unknown shinobi are within? Heiei asked as Hana smelled the air. They knew they would have a fight on their hands if the 7 swordsman member was inside. It was a good thing for them that Naruto was with them and had experience when it came to fighting the swordsman. Before she could answer, Naruto already beat her to it. They're not. They both would have had large chakra signatures if they were, but I'm sensing no one of that nature. It's just bandits. No ninja training whatsoever if I'm reading it right. They've gone for the bridge? Naruto nodded. It's likely. The team on the bridge will be fine. Kakashi can deal with Zabuza, and I'm confident that Eiji, Sasuke, and Sakura can handle the accomplice. Are you worried? Hana asked as she touched his elbow. Despite his hard expression, she knew he must have been troubled with the fact that his brother would be in such close proximity with a member of the 7 swordsmen. She knew if it was Kiba on the bridge, then she would want to be there to protect him. Even if she and her little brother weren't seeing eye to eye right now, an older sibling couldn't help but be worried about their younger siblings. But I'm confident Eiji will be okay. He knows when he is over his head and he knows how to deal with stressful situations. Remember Hana-chan, he was taught by our parents. Eiji knows how to keep himself safe. Naruto explained while taking a deep breath. Besides, I left a clone watching from afar just in case. That way the clone could let me know if something was going wrong. So how we going to do this? Sneak through the roofs and take them out one by one before we get to Gato, or just go straight for where Gato is residing? Neither. Naruto told them as he took out his swords and immediately slashed the wall to pieces, creating a large entrance for them into the building. We're going to force our way through and kill anyone who gets in our way. Both watched as Naruto jumped through the destroyed wall and began to unleash hell on all the bandits that got in his way. Behind him, Hana smirked wildly and decided to let her inner beast out. Heiei watched Hana get on all fours alongside her Ninken, her hair going wild and spiky before she charged inside, and could already begin to hear her fawing over Fong being put to good use. Heiei sighed and scratched his head before he took out his sword. Might as well get this over with, he whispered to himself, letting out one last cough before he joined his comrades. Inside. Get out of my way, you fool. Gato shouted as he pushed one of his hired bandits out of the way, a briefcase in his hand as he yanked a painting off of the wall to reveal a safe behind it. He was a very short man who barely came up to most people's shoulders, with light brown hair that stuck upwards and small green glasses that barely covered his eyes. He wore an expensive-looking suit while a cane rested in his left hand. Damn, that's Zabuza. I should have known he would fail. He muttered angrily to himself as he opened the safe and began stuffing large quantities of cash inside of the briefcase. He didn't care if small notes fell out. All he cared about was getting his money and running for his life. He had been enjoying his day, expecting Zabuza and his apprentice to arrive with the news that they had killed the bridge builder at last. Instead, he heard a piece of the lower walls get destroyed before the sounds of pure carnage made it to his ears. He quickly sent as many of his bandits towards the intruders, which was roughly around 200. However, if the noises he could hear as well as the loud growling and barks, he guessed they were getting hacked away like yesterday's dinner. Come on. He muttered to himself, trying to stuff as much as he could before eventually making it to his limit. He would have to try and come back for the rest when the intruder had either left or been killed by his thugs. His head shot up when he heard the yells of death become louder and louder and realized the intruders were now on the same floor as them and were likely just outside the door to his office. His head shot around to look at the dozen thugs that were in his office to protect him. Well, don't just stand there. Go and kill them. I'm not paying you to just stand around and do nothing all day. He demanded, though it didn't sound threatening with the fear lacing his voice. The thugs all gulped and looked at each other nervously. None of them particularly wanted to go out there. They knew whoever was out there could easily kill them if they had managed to get past all the thugs on the lower level. After a few seconds and feeling a swirl of courage, one of the thugs nodded to Gato and ran out of the room with his sword drawn high into the air. He exited through the door and cried out a loud war cry. A second later, however, that cry came to an abrupt halt. They all waited and listened before a loud thud hit the door to the office and a sword suddenly appeared through the wooden door with blood laced around the steel. I need to leave right now. Gato mentally shouted to himself before he ran across the room and opened one of the windows. He looked down and gulped when he saw the long drop to the ground. There was no way he was getting out of this with some kind of bodily injury. He contemplated it for a second before he heard the door getting smashed to pieces and he saw what could only be described as 3 pairs of demonic-looking eyes all scanning the room before landing on them. Get them! He shouted, making the thugs jump before they lunged and charged at the 3 shinobi. Gato didn't hang around to find out what happened before he jumped from the top of the widow and headed straight towards the ground. The moment the short man hit the ground, he died in agony as he felt a loud crack in his left leg and fell to the ground. It felt as if fire had gone up his leg and was burning him from the inside out. He didn't need to be an expert to know his leg was likely broken from the fall. He rolled around on the ground for a few seconds before he remembered what was happening. Despite the agonizing pain in his leg, he managed to stand with his leg dragged lifelessly. He was mentally thankful for the cane right now as he used it to help support his weight. As glass shattered from above him and screamed when the dead body of one of his thugs landed next to him, his throat cut with a large-looking blade and eyes rolled back into the back of his head. Gato fought through the pain in his leg and moved as quickly as he could through the misty forest. He didn't dare look back as he was too afraid to see what kind of destruction and carnage lay there. I gotta get somewhere safe. I have to get to one of my safe houses, he mentally shouted to himself before a scream ripped through his throat as 2 pairs of sharp jaws locked onto both of his legs and pulled him down to the ground. He screamed and wailed in agony and tried to claw at the dirt before his pain sensors overloaded as 2 swords suddenly went through his hands and pinned him to the ground. His face was a mess of emotions as he very slowly tilted his head, pain still erupting from his throat as he looked up towards his captors. Naruto stood in front of him, his normally warm eyes now cold and emotionless, ignoring the fact that his clothes were covered in blood while having splatters of blood on his cheeks. Beside him, Hana and Hayate were in a similar state, though Hana was growling at him viciously, her inner beast telling her to rip this man limb from limb. 2 of the triplets had their jaws on his legs while the third was near his face, his muzzle almost touching his face. Please, please don't kill me. I'll give you whatever you want. Money, power, women, slaves, anything. You name and I can give it to you. Just don't kill me. He wailed. He was desperate. He didn't want to die. This could not be the need of the mighty Gato. He still had so much to do. Naruto's face never changed. Anything? Naruto asked, showing Gato that maybe there was some hope. Yes, anything. You name it and I can do it. Gato repeated, a blink of happiness on his face. He might just live. All was silent before Naruto said, bring everyone you had killed back to life. Very quickly Gato's face dropped as fear and horror appeared on his face, his skin losing all its color. Despite the pain going through his body, he felt numb as he heard those words. Of all things, it had to be the one thing that was impossible. He felt as if his life was flashing through his eyes. But I see, can't do that. Was he managed to say before Naruto turned to look at Hana. Hana, you know what to do. He whispered before Hana's face lit up with the wicked retribution. The retribution of all of Wave Country as she spoke the 3 words Gato never wanted to hear. End him, boys. The last thing Gato saw was the jaw of the third dog as it lunged at him and latched itself around his throat as the life was literally ripped out of him. The 3 shinobi just stood there as Gato was quite literally ripped into pieces by Hana's Ninken. The death might have been brutal and vomit-worthy, but all 3 knew Gato got exactly what he deserved. A disgusting death for a disgusting person. After another minute the dogs ended their assault, all 3 looking pleased that they were the ones who GT to kill the one who caused such innocent people harm. The dog felt great pride and happiness as the 3 shinobi patted their heads while Hana cooed at them for killing the bad man. Anko was starting to rub off on her in a dangerous way. Naruto walked towards the mutilated body in front of him and removed his swords from Gato's hands. He sheathed Shusui before he used the other to swiftly cut off the Gato's head. He needed proof after all that Gato was dead. What now? Hayate asked as Naruto used a fire jutsu to burn the rest of Gato's body. He watched as Naruto created 4 clones and ordered them to go back into the Gato's hideout and collect as many valuables as they could and seal them into scrolls. Everything in there would go to Wave Country in order to help them get back to prosperity and peace. Go to the bridge? Hana asked as she cleaned the triplets muzzled with a few handkerchiefs while getting rid of the blood on her face and her comrades' faces too. The bridge? We have a favor of goodwill to fulfill first. After all Naruto told them before they jumped into the trees and took off, the burning body of Gato remaining on the ground and becoming nothing but a pile of ash. The bridge? Damn it, Sasuke, stop trying to fight him all on your own. Eiji shouted as Sasuke got pushed back beside Eiji, cuts and bruises covering their bodies as they stood inside a large dome of mirrors made of ice. The Uchiha's face was one of annoyance and anger the moment they got trapped inside this ice dome. Their enemy was the accomplice of Zabuza Momochi and was proving to be stronger than they first thought. They couldn't tell whether their opponent was a male or female due to the thick clothing and the mask covering their face. All they knew was the name of this person was Haku. If that wasn't enough, then they quickly discovered their opponent had a bloodline. The Hayaton bloodline that allowed Haku to combine water and wind to create an ice affinity. It quickly made their fight all the more difficult. Get out of my way, idiot! Sasuke demanded as the black-haired boy quickly ducked and rolled to the side when a large spear of ice was thrown at them from one of the mirrors in front of him. Eiji rolled away as well before the two watched as Haku appeared in all of the ice mirrors as if they were being taunted. Sasuke's eyes spun rapidly as he openly glared at their opponent. He was extremely pleased with himself that moments ago he managed to awaken his Sharingan. It was a sign that he was getting stronger and that soon he would be able to surpass his brother. At least that's what he liked to believe as one Tomo presented itself in his left eye and 2 in his right. A short distance away and hidden in the mist they could hear the battle going on between Kakashi and Zabuza. The grinning of Kakashi's kunais and Zabuza's mighty sword could be heard from a long distance away. Both Jonin-level shinobi were going at it with everything they had. Somewhere they also knew was Sakura doing what she could to protect the bridge builder. She might not have been very strong, but she was determined to do her job at any cost. Even if a small part hoped it would impress Sasuke. It's a shame. I expected better from the son of the 4th Hokage and an Uchiha. I guess I was wrong. Haku taunted as senbons made of ice appeared in her hands. In all of the mirrors, in fact. I'm an Uchiha. There is no one superior to us. Sasuke said hotly as Eiji appeared behind him, standing back to back. Shut up, Sasuke team. She's trying to get you all riled up so you make more mistakes. Shut up, Namikaze. I don't need your help. Yes you do. We can't beat this person alone. We need to work together. Eiji encouraged, but Sasuke was blatantly ignoring him. Since his Sharingan awoken, it was if Eiji could feel Sasuke's ego and pride suddenly get boosted. If they survived this, then he was not looking forward to putting up with Sasuke for the foreseeable future. Maybe you can't, but I'm an Uchiha. Sasuke replied, making Eiji feel like he was talking to a brick wall. Why did Uchihas have to have sticks up their ass? Why couldn't he be more like Itachi and his aunt Mikoto? The duo managed to dodge the next set of senbons that were launched their way and only managed to dodge thanks to Sasuke's Sharingan and Eiji's great reflexes. His father had drilled into Eiji's head when it came to reflexes and dodging attacks. Fighting among each other is a sign that you will not win. How can you win when you are fighting with each other? Haku motioned before she jumped out of the mirror and landed a strike on Sasuke, though Eiji managed to at least block with his forearms when she got to him. Eiji threw his shurikens at the ice user while Sasuke fired a fire jutsu, but Haku quickly escaped their range by melding back into the ice mirror. See? Even our enemy thinks our teamwork sucks. Eiji hissed at Sasuke as he quickly went back to back with Sasuke again. Like I care what this person thinks. I will not be beaten by the likes of you. Sasuke declared as he ran through his hand signs. Katan, Hozenka no Jutsu. He called before shooting flower-shaped fireballs out of his mouth that collided with many of the ice mirrors. Sasuke was about to grin, but his face quickly turned to one of disbelief and anger when he saw his jutsu had no effect. His opponent was still unharmed and didn't have so much as a burn mark on the clothing. How are they so strong? Sasuke hissed. He didn't understand what he was doing wrong. He should be stronger than this. He was an Uchiha. You heard what Kakashi-sensei said. There are people all over the world that are our age and yet are as strong as he is. Maybe even stronger. Look at Naruto and Itachi after all. They're only 18 and Itachi is already an Umbu captain and Naruto managed a draw with the Sandaime. Eiji told him even if he knew it would do nothing to change their situation. You should listen to your friend. He sounds a lot smarter than you are. Haku told him before showering them with another wave of iced senbons. This time though neither were as lucky as before and found a senbon or two landing the strike. Sasuke with 2 in his left arm and Eiji with 3 in his right leg. Both winced and felt their limbs go numb, the senbons hitting specific nerve points. Now we're really in trouble. Eiji muttered while Sasuke's temper was just getting worse. With his arm numb he resorted to trying single-handed hand signs but quickly felt Eiji grip his arm and push it down. Don't be stupid. You try that, you could end up getting yourself hurt. If you can't use single-handed hand signs then don't try without someone more experienced. Eiji told him as Sasuke growled in annoyance. Well, do you have any bright ideas, Namikaze? Sasuke asked and to his surprise he saw Eiji nod his head. I do, but we need to work together. I have jutsu that might be able to put this person down. But I will need your help to distract Haku. He told Sasuke, who for just this once out his pride to the side as Eiji whispered into his ear. Haku observed the two boys conversing and felt that she would need to keep her guard up. If either of them were like their predecessors then she knew she couldn't afford to make a mistake. More senbons appeared in her hands and was about to unleash them when she watched as Eiji made the ram hand sign and shouting Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Haku watched as 20 solid replicas of Eiji appeared in a poof of air and watched as they all began flying around the enclosed space, punching and kicking at the iced mirrors. Your efforts are futile. These mirrors of ice are laced with my chakra, thus strengthening them. You cannot break them with fists and feet. Haku told them in a boring tone. He had thought their previous efforts of attacking her mirrors head-on were evidence enough. The copies didn't listen and they continued anyway as Haku quickly got annoyed with these repeated efforts. Clearly she was wrong at having high hopes at having a challenge with these two genin. Sensatsu Susho. She commanded as dozens and dozens of iced senbons appeared in her hands and prepared to throw them again at her enemy. There was enough senbons to put down a small village if necessary. There was no way these two boys would be dodging the amount she was about to throw at them. However, before she could, she watched as Sasuke threw a kunai before her towards the fighting clones with an explosion tag lighting up behind it. An explosion quickly sounded out and caught the attention of the others. Zabuza ceased his fighting with Kakashi for just a second and grinned from beneath his bandages covering his mouth. It sounds like Haku is having fun with your student Kakashi. I doubt they will last much longer at this rate. Haku is known for being quite cruel. Don't write my students off just yet, Zabuza. They are stronger than they appear. They are of the Uchiha and Namikaze families. Kakashi told him before the two rushed each other, sparks flying off their weapons as they met. Haku covered her eyes. The explosion as well as the smoke from the destroyed clones had caused her vision to become very limited and couldn't see her toe opponent. Staring inside the ice mirror was causing her no vision and tentatively leaned part of her body out of the mirror the real her was residing in. Where are they? She thought before she saw the shadow of Sasuke Uchiha appear and saw him throw kunai and shuriken towards with his one good arm towards her. Not thinking about looking for the other boy, she deflected each strike with her ice-made senbons. All except one that was off target and sailed past her iced mirrors. Sasuke was barely standing. He had been a little too close to the explosion and had black soot covering his body. The fight was beginning to tax him more and more. All you have done was slow down the inevitable. I will now end you now just as Zabuza-sama has commanded. Haku told them only to realize that with the smoke now disappear, Eiji was now missing from the dome of ice. Haku now leaned her entire body out of the mirrors to get a better look. Neither boys were likely in any condition to fight her properly now. It was time she landed the final blows to them before making her way over to the bridge builder and their pink-haired comrade. Where is he? Uchiha-san? Sasuke's face slowly lifted up to meet her and surprised Haku when she saw he had a light smirk on his face while breathing heavily. Why don't you ask him yourself? Haku looked confused before she heard a puff of a transformation technique occur behind her while the sound of swirling could also be heard, making her eyes widen as a BRGHT blue light could be seen from behind her. She turned her body around only to find Eiji inches away from her with a glowing ball of chakra in his right hand. Rasengan. The attack hit straight in the stomach of Haku, causing a mixture of saliva and blood to spit out of her mouth and run from under the mask. She spiraled through the air, crashing through the very ice mirrors she created before crashing to the ground hard. Gotcha! Eiji muttered as he breathed hard before he fell to the ground panting hard. He crawled over to the side of the bridge and watched as the rest of the ice mirrors around Sasuke felt and smashed to pieces as they fell to the ground. Sasuke looked a little wide-eyed at Eiji while feeling a pang of jealousy appear in his stomach before he too fell to the ground as his previous chakra exertion finally hit him. It looks like my two students defeated yours, Zabuza. Kakashi said as he glared at Zabuza, who stood in front of him with his great sword clashing with one of Kakashi's kunais. Sparks flew off the metal as they continued to press all their strength into the attacks. Don't get cocky, Kakashi. It's not over yet. Zabuza taunted before pushing Kakashi away and went through a number of hand seals. Mizu Bunshin no Jutsu. Dozens of water clones appeared around him and all immediately lunged at Kakashi, who covered his right hand in lighting with his Chidori. Just try it. It's time I stopped holding back. Kakashi taunted back. He zoned in on the real Zabuza with his Sharingan, intensifying the Chidori in his right hand and preparing to land the final blow. He watched the clones rush forward and knowing that the jutsu would have zapped a portion of Zabuza's chakra away. Waiting until the moment was right, Kakashi shot forward at such speed that Zabuza was momentarily caught off guard. The Jonin from Konoha sped through the clones of Zabuza before any one of them could strike Kakashi with the mighty sword. Zabuza could only watch as the Kakashi destroyed before he could feel the sparks from the attack hitting him from where he stood. This is your end, Zabuza. Just like I said. Kakashi told him as he got within just a few feet from the swordsman of the mist. Raikiri, wait! Kakashi heard as he got close to Zabuza, who was looking at the copy ninja with surprised eyes at how fast he truly was and seeing how close to death he was with Kakashi attacks only inches away from his chest. A bead of sweat quickly ran down his face at knowing he had almost been bested once again by Kakashi. Zabuza and Kakashi watched as Naruto, Hana and Hayate appeared a couple of meters away, all still covered in the blood of the mercenaries at Gato's hideout. All three had a serious look on their faces before Naruto sent Hana to heal up Eiji and Sasuke while Hayate went to ensure Sakura and the bridge builder were okay. Zabuza Momochi, demon of the hidden mist. Zabuza took a good look at the young man beside him before realizing who he was. Konoha's bladed devil. What do you want, kid? Naruto bristled at the comment of being a kid but shrugged it off for a moment. He unsealed a scroll from one of the seals on his wrists before throwing the scroll to Zabuza, who quickly caught it and opened it up. What are you doing, Naruto? Kakashi questioned but got no response back from his sensei's eldest son, who kept his eyes on Zabuza. The demon of the mist showed no reaction while reading the contents that were inside of the scroll. After a minute of silence he finally looked up from the scroll. And this is real? This is no joke? He finally asked before Naruto nodded in confirmation. Naruto shook his head while placing his hand on the hilt of Shusui. Zabuza Momochi, on the special orders of Mei Terumi, the 5th Mizukage, I have been requested to tell you it's time for you to go home. Kirigakure is now free of Yagura's reign and is in need of your help to rebuild. If you should decline this offer, Naruto drew Shusui and pointed it towards Zabuza. Then I will kill you where you stand. The sheer iron look that was in Naruto's eyes almost frightened Zabuza, who couldn't help but gulp. Even Kakashi felt a shiver go down his spine. Decide. Now. That's it for part 7. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.